talking about stuff that I could see in front of me but wouldn't actually maybe want to interface with just yet, is the idea of Microsoft working on its own VR device. So there have been some cool things. I'll give them. They had the HoloLens stuff back in the day. We saw some of the cool functionality with Minecraft. They showed us that really cool floor demo back in the day. But there is a new patent that was filed by Microsoft that reveals that the company could be working on its own virtual reality tech to compete with the PSVR 2, which I think right now, given the sales through that we've seen so far as far as PSVR 2 goes, always makes me kind of nervous, the idea of someone else jumping into that ecosystem and jumping into that ring to try and compete. But the patent describes a system that's self-calibrating and also accommodating of deformations and other changes to the device. The patent might not look much like a VR headset. It's a solid eye tracking system that can self-calibrate, compensate. It has like a user-friendly VR system, but it could simply be maybe just an improvement to the current HoloLens that's augmented reality tech. So, and that's obviously been used by like US Army, among others, for like training systems and stuff like that. So there's a possibility that maybe it's something that they're looking at like way down in the future, but personally for me, and I'll pass it to you guys to see your thoughts, but I think this is probably just, like they're saying, maybe an augmented reality tech upgrade for their HoloLens. But Luke, do you think they're going to dip their toes into VR? I know Phil and some of the other folks in the team have been pretty vocal about like, no, we don't want to do that. We want to see how the market goes. And then we see stuff like Sony with, I think it ended up being something like 0.02 or maybe it was like 2% of the actual install base had actually purchased PSVR 2 systems at this point. Do you think they're jumping into it, or do you think it's just an augmentation for their HoloLens?
No, I don't think it's anything other than protecting their brand and future-proofing stuff for any number of the medical or military elements of it. I had a good conversation with Cog, which I would encourage people to go listen to, because he talked a great deal about sorry, I'm hearing a weird beeping. He talked a great deal about what Microsoft's strategy is, and in large part it is to build a system where you can access their content anywhere and do the opposite of hardware locking. And so I think it's far more likely where we see them enter into VR by way of saying, all right, you can access our games on a PSVR 3, on the Oculus, what have you, or whatnot. They would like their content to be in certain places. I don't see them wanting to make hardware. And the first gut reaction for anybody that's barely in the know would probably be like, well, they're struggling right now to get hardware out. That's not the same thing. That's not one-to-one. That's not really how... That's too short term for this kind of a question. But I do absolutely see a day where what we're doing is putting on our glasses and we have access to games. And it's likely a VR AR hybrid, right? That's really more likely what you're getting for the masses. So I don't see Microsoft doing this on a hardware level, but I do see them working with Steam, working with Meta, working with PlayStation to access their VR elements. But there's no reason to enter into an expensive niche market when you're in third place in the console space, when you're struggling everywhere but cloud to gain top billing. At least that's my takeaway.
Yeah. No, I'd say that's very well put. The idea of Microsoft wanting to be everywhere, I mean, that goes along the lines with everything else that they've said, right? Is they want to be the most accessible moving forward. And so for something like that, if you can make it so you have functionality with those headsets or stuff like that, and you can actually just drop it in and you can play it from those systems, that's definitely one thing for sure. It allows them to avoid putting, you know, a dog in the fight, as it were, for a hardware type of thing, but just embrace the systems around them instead, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I like that idea. Sour, what's your thought on this? Do you think that's along the same line that you would go with there, or do you think they're gonna you think they're going to dip their toes on the VR side?
I hope not, to be honest. That's something, tested VR briefly, and I think it's not there yet. I think it's a long shot away. I do think in the future, it could be interesting. It could get pretty interesting, but I still think there's a lot of things that needs to happen, and especially getting rid of all the cables, all the stuff, and really feeling immersed. But then you have the problem of like how immersed do you want to get, because at the same times you got an environment that you have around your house that you know you don't want anything to happen. You can get hurt or anything can happen. So, it's something that, needs to continue to evolve, and hopefully, I don't know, 10 years from now, maybe it's at a state where it's viable for them, and then maybe they decide to jump in. But right now, I don't see it as a smart bet to get in. Maybe they can keep testing and quietly working on secret projects, but for the masses, like for the public, I don't think it's a smart idea.
I think, I mean, I definitely agree with you guys on that one as well. But I think Luke definitely brought up a good point on that, and you kind of touched on it too, right? Is the fact that you've got a lot of stuff going on around you.
Yeah.
The whole idea of like a sensory deprivation chamber type of thing, like most of us are adults that have responsibilities. We have kids. We have things we have to do. We can't just, jump into this thing and ignore everything around us for hours and hours on end. So I definitely like the idea, like Luke was talking about, with, it being a simple thing of putting on the glasses, having that AR functionality, stuff like that. That, building on top of what you're already seeing, I feel like makes way more sense. I think even just in a safety factor, I think it's a better situation. You can browse, like TikTok or something for 5 or 10 minutes and come across a few videos of people accidentally throwing controllers at their TVs, walking into walls, tripping into their TVs and stuff when they're in VR sets. So I think the more situational and like environmental awareness you have while you're involved in something like that makes a lot of sense. Plume, would that be the get for you? Like, I know you ended up getting a PSVR 2, right? Um, would
Yeah,
you
I did.
prefer an AR setup, or do you think the VR, like the current setup with VR, is kind of more what you would prefer?
I like the fact that in VR, when you put your headset on, you disappear from your current world. I don't know, like not because I don't like my current world, but it's just a completely different experience. It's like brings you to somewhere different that you aren't currently in. So I personally would like VR. Like I don't think Xbox should do it, but I wouldn't mind if they opened up their ecosystem so other VR headsets could be utilized on the platform. I mean, all the PC headsets, and then if you wanted to purchase games that could run on Series X for your VR headset, you could do that. I think that would be really cool. Even with PSVR 2, I wish they would open that up so you could use it on your PC and get access to PC VR games. But one of the things with that patent, which was cool, was the eye tracking, because there is eye tracking on PSVR 2, and it actually works very well. It's actually to me a big differentiating factor from other VR headsets that don't have it. Like it really is like makes wherever you're looking much clearer than anywhere else, which is really important for immersion, and also obviously to take a load off of the game. So it's not everything is crystal clear, and you can probably get better graphics because of that. So I like the VR stuff. I mean, it is immersive. I think it's good technology. It's just way too early. Like it would be a waste of money, I think, for Microsoft to jump into it at this point. And we're seeing the sales of PSVR 2. I don't. People are saying they're bad, but I think like they're pretty what they were expecting, even though under their what they had predicted. But it's I don't know. I think it's a good technology, but I don't think Microsoft should do it at this point.
Sure. Yeah, and I do think you're probably right on maybe with how Sony is looking at their current sales with theirs, right? And the
Yeah.
fact that you look at their life sales for the first VR, they ended up getting somewhere to like 5.5 million, I think, overall. but that was across the life of the product. The fact that it's about 2% right now, maybe they were expecting that it was going to be maybe a slower trip, like a slower climb up the mountain on that one.
Yeah, it's expensive shoe to get into, right? Because you have to buy a PS5 as well. It's not just the headset. So
yeah, you're talking instantly like $1,200 after tax, or I don't even know what that would be in Canadian. I have no idea.
It's I don't know, like 1,500 at least, probably more than that. But like we see how much the PS5 is selling. They're obviously, and they're the rumors of the PS5 Pro, all that type of stuff. They're going to reduce the price of the PlayStation 5, I think, in the next couple of years, and then they'll probably be able to reduce the price of the PSVR 2 and just ship a ton more to that huge install base that they have. So I think right now the numbers not terrible, but I don't think it's really showing what the PSVR 2 is going to do. I think they'll support it throughout the majority of this generation.
Sure. Crazy, real quick. Just want to ask you if you had a if you had an AR system from Microsoft, if they made this thing available for general consumer purpose, what would you do with it, and why would it be buying a Microsoft or a McDonald's franchise? My bad.
Wait, you go. Wait, what? What was the question?
So my actual question for you.
Yeah.
No, so if you ended up having the opportunity to get one of these AR systems, like if they made it publicly available to do that type of stuff, does that interest you? Did you end up getting a VR, or are you just kind of sitting back?
I'm gonna tell you something. Anything that comes up is always interesting, right? Because we always love to see what these companies can do, right? It's always interesting if, let's say, Microsoft jumps into that world and makes a VR and AR or whatever the heck they're gonna make. But if they do make something, then it will be cool. But for me, right now at this moment, I think my position is Microsoft needs to stop getting into too much stuff and needs to focus its attention onto itself, get some things organized, right, before you go on forward, and go and get into other stuff, right? Because we know what's been going on this past week, right, with its games. So, which we will probably talk about it real soon. But yes, they need to focus on themselves. They need to fix a couple stuff before jumping into a whole new tech. Of course, I'm always interested in new tech. No joke. I mean, it's always cool. New tech is always fine. It's always awesome. But for as of right now, I don't need them to jump over that. I need them to focus a little bit more on themselves a bit and then jump into other new stuff.
Yes, focus would definitely be a good thing at this point for them. I'm definitely on like the new tech and stuff. I always enjoy that side of things. But that actually does bring us to the next thing I was going to bring up.
Like for example, can you imagine me with a VR in my head? I mean, what do you think was gonna? I mean, you're already laughing. What do you think would happen me with a VR in my head? Seriously, I'll probably destroy the room in half.
I don't think
your boss. No one answer.
I think there's a lot of things that we can't talk about that I could expect you to do.
Luckily, Louis, they've improved technology for people like you with the VR headsets that you can see when you're about to run into something. Now there's like a virtual wall around you.
I think Crazy will still run regardless.
Yeah. Is this part of the game?
No.
All right. Well, talking about future tech and stuff like that, I did want to touch real quick on